I did just spend about an hour just positioning this camera and it's still lopsided, so whatever. Well, hi everyone. So as promised, I am doing a story time video vlog, I guess. Many of you have asked me about my journey from Italy and being an immigrant and coming to the US. So I figured, since I am trying to share more about myself and my background and just really ramp up my YouTube channel with more content that hopefully many people can relate to, or maybe that it can help people. Yeah, it just seemed kind of like a natural intro to who I am. So get ready. Here's my story as an immigrant from Italy to the United States. Okay, so I was born in southern Italy. My hometown and the place I was born is Gallipoli. Gallipoli is on the west coast of the heel of the boot of Italy. It is a smaller town. It is absolutely gorgeous. We are known for beautiful beaches. We are right on the Ionian Sea, and it is just a beautiful place. Many tourists go there. Although I have to say that when most people ask me where I'm from and I say Gallipoli, no one has any clue where that is. So as pointed on the map, that's where the location of this beautiful town is. So I was born in Gallipoli in 1983. I guess I'm giving away my age. It's all good. So I knew from an early age that both of my parents are Italian, but my mother, who is actually from the town of Bari in Italy, she was born in Italy, but she and her family migrated to the US, and I am not certain how old she was. It was between the ages of 2 and 5, I believe. And yeah, so I knew from early on that my mom she really considered herself American more than Italian, because she had moved to the US, particularly New York, from an early age, and she had spent her entire childhood there and most of her adult life there. She had gotten married and had my brother and sister, and had a life in New York. And I knew that, and it was always very cool for me to think that my mom was American, especially being from a small town. A lot of people thought that was really, really cool. And yeah, so the reason why my mom ended up going back to Italy, and that's why I was born there, is that at a certain point in her life, she went through a divorce and met my dad and married my dad, and all the stuff that goes on into that, and decided to stay in Gallipoli and make a life there. So my dad and my mom often spoke about her past and her living in New York, and I know that my mom always spoke very fondly of it. She really missed it. And thinking back at some of the things that my mom would say about, the differences between Italy and New York, is that it must have not been very easy for her to go from a very advanced multicultural community such as New York to a small southern Italian town. I know that my mom really struggled with that. It was a smaller place. The mentality was very different. Culturally, they were a little bit stricter. Culturally, they were still very much stuck in tradition and not as open-minded, I guess, as you can say, as an American would be. It wasn't until I was about 12 years old that we had sort of like a life-changing thought or idea. And I say we, but I really just mean my mom. So the entire thing that prompted the idea of moving to the US was my uncle, my mom's sister, coming to stay with us from America, and he stayed with us for about a year. Now, he also, just like my mom, had lived his entire life in New York and traveled and worked and went to school in America, and he was having some issues. Of course, this was a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly all the details, but I remember my mom being uncertain at first if that's really what she wanted to do. Going back, my dog just yawned and it sounded like a gremlin. So all I know is that at one point he finally convinced my mom to move back to the US. From that point on, it gets very interesting because it was a whirlwind. Like, it just seemed like once my mom made up her mind that we were going to move to the US, everything moved really, really fast. It seemed like we didn't even have a moment, or I didn't even really have a moment to process it. It was like the house got sold and we just moved. So during this time frame, I was actually in 7th grade, so I was in middle school in Italy, and the prospect of leaving a small town and going to America, it was exciting. It was something that I would say it's a dream coming true. Maybe for a lot of people growing up in a small town and, hearing so much about my mom's life in New York, and so I definitely felt excited about it, but I also felt, again, so rushed that I wasn't able to really process what was going on, how my life could possibly change. And I know there were a lot of different reasons for this, but my mom wasn't really allowing me to share any of the details or even the news that I was leaving to any of my friends at school. Again, she had a reasoning for it, but it was really difficult for me to know that I was about to leave everyone and everything I knew, and I wasn't allowed to really say anything. It was just really, really hard. And I was getting finally to the age where 12 years old, you start planning for, where am I going to go after middle school? In Italy, the high school system, you could actually choose which high school you go to depending on what trade and what you're interested in. At least that's how it was in my hometown. I can't speak for it now because obviously it's been a long time, but it was a time that everyone was sort of thinking about their high school journey. And I take it back, correction, I wasn't in 7th grade, I was actually 8th grade. So all of my friends were planning on their high school journey, and here I am knowing that I am not going to be a part of that. I am leaving. That was tough. That was really tough for me, and I didn't really understand why it had to be such a secret, but it was. So we sold the house, and literally a couple of days before we were due to leave and fly to America, I was allowed to tell my friends that I wasn't coming back to school like the next days because I was moving to the US. Now, being from a small town, I had known my friends my entire life. So basically from 1st grade up to 8th grade, I knew all of them. We were pretty close. Every day going to school and seeing the same people, sitting next to the same people, eating next to the same people. Like I developed some really close bonds and relationships with them. And I remember that when my friends found out that I was leaving, they were crying and they all started writing me these amazing touching letters, going back, down memory lane on when we were younger and how much they will miss me. And it was definitely emotional. Okay, so it is now October 1997. So this is when it all went down. And we fly to America. But my mom decided not to go back to New York. She really did not like the cold weather. She really struggled with it. So she kind of randomly picked a place, and she picked Florida because of the warmth and, just kind of starting anew. And we were all excited about Florida and the palm trees. I remember the palm trees were a big deal for me. So October 1997, I do not remember the exact date, but we got to Florida. So, first impressions. My first impression was that everything here is so much bigger. So much bigger. Now, I do want to note that this was not my very, very first time visiting the US. A few years earlier, we had actually visited that same uncle when he lived in Pennsylvania. So I think around that time, maybe I was 10. I visited the US for the first time with my parents. And, we went to a beautiful little town in Pennsylvania, which I don't even remember right now, the name. But it was a beautiful place with, surrounded by mountains, and we were pretty much there a lot. We didn't do a whole lot of traveling or sightseeing when we went there. So really, when we moved to Florida, it was really my first impression of just how larger scale everything is here. Just the highways alone. It was like insane to be on so many, having so many lanes around you and all these cars, and the cars are bigger. So everything is just bigger. So that was kind of overwhelming, but also really cool. So as far as any other specific reasoning that my mom wanted us to move to America, it was always reiterated, especially to me, that in America, I would have bigger opportunities than in a smaller town in Italy. And absolutely, that's true. I know just from the way my life went that I was able to really have a lot more opportunities in my life to expand and grow and make something of myself. But I think it's also very important to point out that we were not struggling in Italy. We were not poor. We were not, in any way or form just felt like we had to flee the country or anything like that. We actually were pretty comfortable that during the last few years of our life in Italy. We had just moved into this beautiful home. We had a cute little garden. So we were doing pretty well. Definitely not rich. Not anything at all like that, but we didn't really struggle financially. So the move here was just more like, hey, this is just going to give you a better view of the world and more opportunities. So, and I'm saying that because that comes in shortly after we moved here, because I started feeling a little bit resentful. So, it was really kind of weird and exhausting because once we got here, we didn't really have a plan. We didn't have an idea where we were going to settle. Like, we knew we were coming to Florida, but where? So we literally got into a rental car and we started like driving to different areas. I remember us staying at a few different hotels as we traveled through towns, and that it felt very unstable already, and I didn't like that because I went from, being stable, knowing my peers at school and knowing my daily life and my daily routine and sleeping in my own bed every single night, to now every other night we're sleeping at a different hotel, some of them very questionable. And again, remember, this is all brand new culturally to me, and I also don't speak the language. I never learned English before coming to this country. So it already started feeling very overwhelming. So we finally settled for a while because I needed to get into school. So this was October, school had already started here, and I needed to get into school right away. So we decided to settle in Oldsmar. So my parents found a rental in a community very well known in Oldsmar, and we basically enrolled me into school. So I remember the day very vividly that we went to the school, the local middle school, to enroll me, and already I was kind of like, I felt like a little tiny baby fish in this like huge ocean, just because everything again was so much bigger, so much like larger scale, and I already was starting to feel those nerves, like, oh, okay, there are lockers here. We didn't have lockers at my old school. Kids here seem just a lot taller, a lot bigger, and triple the amount of the ones that I had in my old school. Another thing is, because I didn't speak English, they did not want to put me in my current grade, which would have been 8th grade. They wanted to put me back into 7th grade. So the theory behind that was, she's already going to be kind of struggling to catch up just to learn the language. So let's not throw brand new material at her to learn. Let's bring her back a year so that she is studying and learning things she's already done, hopefully in Italy, and she can just work on really like nailing the language and learning and all of that. Yeah, in theory that's great, except every single subject, I want to say here, is taught very differently. So even math, believe it or not, the way you outline division when you write and solve the long division was completely different format than the ones I was doing in Italy. So I was told I was doing it wrong, when in Italy I'd been taught just a different method that worked just the same. You got the same answer. So in the grand scheme of things, no, I do not think that made any difference at all. It did not make it any easier on me. All of the money from the house sale in Italy basically had to be put towards, rentals here, like a car rental, property rental, so we had a place to stay, paying the bills like electricity and water, while we try to figure out what we were going to do. And in the meantime, there was a lot of pressure on my parents to find a job. So basically things really started feeling tight, and financially, emotionally, it was not easy. I think that was the first time in my life that I actually felt and sensed the financial struggle for the first time in my life. Because in Italy, it didn't feel that way. Not to say that my parents had never struggled financially, because I know they had, but it was not something I felt firsthand. But here, when we moved to the US, it definitely like put a strain on our family dynamics. So it comes the time to start school, 7th grade in an American middle school. It was the most traumatic experience that I recall, maybe one, not the, but one of the most traumatic experiences. So I'm often asked, what are the differences between an Italian school and an American school? Well, first of all, aside the fact that, again, the school compared to the one I went to in Italy was so much bigger, things are done differently here. For example, in Italy, from 6th grade up to 8th grade, you have the same class, the same people. You start your day in the same exact class, you're sat next to the same exact person, there is no changing classes, you stay in the same exact room, and the teachers are the ones that come into the room. So the teachers are the ones that do the switching. So we start school and we're in the same class with the same people, and then the history teacher starts and then second period the French teacher comes in, and then third period the I don't know, PE teacher comes in. So you're really just centered in the same place, and there is no needing to find your classrooms. There is no, late bells or anything like that, because you're constantly in the same place. So that was a huge adjustment, because I couldn't find my damn classes here, and I couldn't even speak English. So the first day of school, I'm literally given the schedule saying, these are your classes, these are the room numbers, good luck finding them. I didn't have a tour. I didn't have anyone before showing me where the classes would be. I was really on my own. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And I got lost so many times, and I was late to all the classes because I couldn't find them at first. And it was very annoying and embarrassing to walk into the class 5 minutes late, and everyone is staring at you. And that was probably one of the very first intense anxiety moments that I started feeling. Okay, so now let's talk about the real hardship that I encountered once involved and immersed in a completely brand new school system in a brand new country. So it was definitely very, very difficult to fit in. I, again, didn't speak English, and honestly, that really made me a target for bullying. I just had this idea coming to the US, which is known all over the world as the melting pot that welcomes all backgrounds. It's filled with different ethnicities and races, and how welcoming they've always been throughout the centuries. But when I started school here, I was really an outcast, and I was bullied for being not only someone who didn't and understand English, but even my way of dressing, which was obviously different than the kids here, and my hair and my features and my accent and my shoes, everything was just criticized and ridiculed. And that December of 1997 is actually when I turned 13, and that for most of us is a very difficult age when we're trying to find ourselves and our identity and just figuring out where we're going in life and who we want to be friends with. And I was here, brand new country, being bullied, being made fun of every day on a consistent basis. And I remember waking up in the morning and being so upset that I had to go face another day with peers that didn't understand me, and that I would cry in the shower every single morning. I just did not want to be there. So the first thing that the school did was to enroll me in ESOL. ESOL is basically, for what I understand, a program that helps children coming into the school whose English is their second language. So putting me in ESOL was supposed to be helping me with learning English and I guess helping me fit in somehow. And here's the ironic part. When I went into the ESOL program, I was together for at least one period out of the 7 throughout the day with other students whose English was their second language. And most of them, I want to say all of them at that particular school, were Hispanic. So I actually, my very first friends or people that were just at least kind to me were those ESOL kids, probably because we had all this stuff in common. We understood that it was difficult for all of us to fit in a new culture. It was difficult not speaking English. So that was my favorite time of the day because I got to be around people that actually I felt were more like me. The whole point of ESOL program was to help me learn English, but I did learn Spanish because I was with so many Hispanic friends that I picked up Spanish instead, which was a lot easier than English because Italian and Spanish are pretty similar. So at least I did pick up another language, but it wasn't English. So the whole English learning experience, I don't attribute it at all to being in the ESOL. It actually put me behind in more schoolwork. I remember being in the ESOL class and we were just given coloring pages. I mean, it's 7th grade. I'm not saying that the entire curriculum was not good, but it wasn't really that good. Not in my experience. This is my personal experience of that particular school, of that particular class time frame. So I'm not saying, disclaimer, I'm not saying that all ESOL programs, you know, are like that. That was just my personal experience of it. So the good thing is that I've always been very good at picking up languages. I've always loved learning other languages. So I did learn English eventually. It was something that I just had to learn on my own. And for many, many, many years, and even now, I will mispronounce things, read things wrong just because it's not my native language. And again, while all this is going on, I am just very isolated. And I found comfort doing those ESOL classes, which by the way, didn't last throughout the whole school year. I think they put me in it only for a few months when I first got there. But once that class ended, I no longer had those other foreign kids to talk to or even be around and just feel at peace and comfortable with. And there was no other foreign kid in the school from Italy. So I did feel very isolated because the Hispanic kids, rightfully so, they gravitated towards each other. And already middle school and high school is very cliquey as it is. So here I am, culturally different than everyone else, I feel. And I don't want to say that there was not even one person that wasn't kind to me. There was one girl, her name was Brittany, and she was very sweet and very nice, but she obviously had her group of friends and she would often get frustrated because I couldn't always understand what she was saying. So, you know, she's a young kid, she already has her friends, she was nice to me, but we didn't really develop a friendship, you know, so it was very hard. Some of the other differences, aside from the weird chasing periods in different classrooms thing, which I hated. Obviously the fashion and, you know, what we wore in Italy was very, very different than what we wore here. When I moved here, first of all, I wasn't able to bring all of my wardrobe. I had to just handpick things because we were moving our entire life to a completely new country. So we were very limited in what we could bring with us. So I did have a handful of clothes that I brought, and that's the clothes that we wore at that time in Italy. The fashion here was very different, and on top of that, because financially we were struggling and my parents needed to find a job really, really quick, I mean, going out shopping for school clothes was completely out of the picture. So I was, for one, I was like wearing, you know, a few of the same items in a short period of time. And on top of that, they were not the cool clothes. So when I came here in 1997, I was like really overwhelmed by the baggy pants that were really, really in style back then. Low to the waist, and even the girls were wearing just those very large legged elephant pants. And here I am with the complete opposite. They weren't exactly skinny jeans, but they were like this very straight leg pants, you know, kind of normal tightness at the waist and fitting at the actual waist. So that also made me a little bit of a target, because we all know how kids are in school. They scrutinize you for everything. So that was one of them. Okay, so yeah, that was the beginning of just a downward spiral for me. Within 2 months of moving to the US, the original excitement really started to turn into severe anxiety, and I want to say depression, because I lived in a world where I didn't identify anymore. It was very emotionally draining, and I had no one to talk to, really. My parents, again, they were looking for jobs. They were very stressed, and just the financial aspect, again, was taking a toll on us, because we had to find means to survive, right? My parents went from having my dad having a stable career in Italy for, years and years and years, to now him coming to America trying to find a new job. And by the way, he also doesn't speak English, something that it was like, it's been triple the challenge for him to learn than what I had to go through. So that was just bringing a lot of tension as well. So yeah, that was the whole school experience that really kind of spiraled me into not feeling like myself anymore. I was writing letters to my friends back home in Italy, because as I mentioned earlier, we were very sad to part ways, and we promised we would write to each other. And really, I felt like I didn't want to forget about them. I didn't want them to forget about me. I had spent so much of my childhood with them that I wanted to keep that connection. So I started writing all of my friends back in Italy all these long letters, and I never received one back. And for a long time, I was very, very hurt about that. Many years later, come to find out is that they'd never received my letters. I have my suspicions on why, which is something that I don't want to address in this video, because it's already going to be a little bit lengthy, so I might address it in a different video. But they basically never got their letter, and I never got one in return, because they didn't know my address. So that was another way that I felt very distant and isolated. I guess you can say, especially because, again, I just turned into a teen, which is a very challenging time in anyone's life. I guess you could say that I started feeling very resentful, because I started looking at my parents and thinking, why? Like, what is the point of moving here? We were fine. We had a good life. And here I am struggling and anxious and just feeling really, like I don't know where I belong anymore. And all because you wanted to just change our lives around, just uproot us and bring us to a brand new world that I don't understand. So I did have a lot of resentment about the move at that point. So obviously that was a very challenging part of my migration to the US. But of course, with every experience, there's always a positive note and there's always a lesson learned. And I never regret coming here. My life has turned out to be as beautiful as it is now. Even with the good and the bad, I know that this is where I was meant to be. It was part of the divine plan. Was it traumatic? Was it challenging? Of course. But at the same time, I had kids here. I met best friends here. I had amazing job opportunities here and activities that more than likely I wouldn't have had in my hometown in Italy. So I am very, very happy to be here. So a lot of times people will ask, what are the pros and cons? Like what is best about Italy that you don't have here, and vice versa. And my answer is always the same. It's like you're trying to compare two completely different worlds, and it is not which one is better, right? It's not which one is better than the other, but it's more like the differences are so big that you just can't even begin to figure out which one would be better to live in. I can tell you, because I also get this question a lot, I can tell you that I would never move back to live there. Not because I don't like it there. It's obviously, you know, my home, my original home, and I have a lot of family there still. But I think after living in America for so many years, and having become more Americanized and having built a life here, a foundation here, and just integrating, because now I am fully integrated in the culture, it would be very, very difficult and probably a second trauma for me to uproot and go back there and live there and completely be finding a different mentality, different cultural understandings and expectations, because there are different cultures, cultural differences. Now, you know, in all honesty, I haven't lived there for many years, so places evolve, modernize, and people become more open-minded, and you know, things progress all the time. So I am sure that life there is not as I fundamentally remember it when I was a child living there. But I still think that it is a lot more slow paced than it is here, which is a wonderful thing. But I'm not used to it. So it's all about where you've integrated in and what you've become used to. And I think I would have a really hard time really slowing down to the point where things close at like 6 p.m. and that's it, you're done for the night. It's hard for me. Now again, I'm not saying that all the stores there close early. I guess the point I'm trying to make is once you are used to a certain lifestyle, or you know, you've integrated in a certain culture, it's hard to start all over again. And you know, even though I am from there originally, I moved here when I was 12, so I really had most of my life be immersed in the American culture. Of course, there are things that I do miss there. I do miss how it's a little bit less commercialized and a little bit more holistic, especially where I am from. You know, it didn't seem, again, especially back then, I don't know how much that has changed now, but things seemed a little bit more of a natural approach there. So I liked that. I did like the small town feel, and I do still miss that. I feel that it's a lot harder here or in the areas I've lived to build that community, the spirit of help thy neighbor kind of thing. As in there, it was very, very normal, you know, to help one another. It was also a very gossipy town, because that's what happens in towns that are very small. But there was this feeling of connection with your community and to your roots, and I really like that, and I really do miss that as well. The town I lived in, basically, you know, in the afternoon when people got off work, they ate or whatever, people would sit outside of their homes and basically say hello to all the neighbors, and people would walk down the street and stop at the different houses and the people sitting outside of the houses and just kind of chat. It is very common there to walk everywhere and not hop in your car as we do here, and just kind of walk to the stores, walk downtown, and you know, of course you're going to run into someone that you know, and then you just go grab some coffee together. So I do miss that, and I wish that we as in my family as a whole unit could experience that, because it does make you feel like you're part of a bigger picture, and you're part of a community in a larger sense. So I do miss that. Another thing that I get asked is, you know, what do you think would have made your journey a little bit easier or a little less traumatic when you had arrived here in America? And honestly, I I could pick a million things, like a million things, but I think I wish that schools were a little bit more proactive in not just putting an immigrant student into an ESOL program, but also somehow provide assistance and help and guidance in integrating that child into this new culture. So I get it, you need funds for that, and I know a lot of our schools are, you know, understaffed and under budget, and they're just struggling as it is, so I get that. But I wish that there was more emphasis on providing maybe some type of like counseling and or therapy in school, where the immigrant children could actually get more one-on-one assistance integrating into the culture, not just putting them in a room where you're just kind of like, okay, well, hopefully you'll learn English, you know, and then just go back to your class and good luck. Again, I don't know if that's just my experience from, you know, 20 something years ago, or if that's still kind of the norm. So if anyone has any insight on that, I would love to hear of more positive advances and more positive steps taken to integrate foreign children into the school system and really making them feel like they're part of the community. I am sure that I may be an isolated case where I felt just kind of thrown to the wolves, and that the adults there did not really care at all. But you know, I would love to hear of any of your experiences with your, you know, if you have migrated to the US, or if you have children that were immigrants and they had to integrate in a new school here. I would love to hear that and their experiences. So it is not at all a bashing of the school system here or anything like that, but I wish I had had that opportunity, especially because my parents were very, I don't know if I want to use the word distant, but they were so preoccupied in finding a job that I couldn't really turn to them. You know, they had their own issues to deal with. I needed to deal with my own issues. So, yeah, so that is my story on how I'm from Italy and I moved here to the US. I still reside in Florida, actually still in the Tampa Bay area where we originally moved in. And I can tell you that, as I said earlier, everything is a divine plan. I don't regret moving here. I love this country. I am a US citizen. I feel very much American, but I still feel the strong connections to Italy as well. So if you have any questions about my my story, or if you want to share your own, please write it in the comments. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your own journeys and your adventure being multicultural or moving to a different country. So make sure to subscribe and click on that notification bell, because I've been doing a lot of content creation, and I want to share with you guys a little more about me every week. So thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.